All right, so we have both of the necks here. We have the old neck right here and the new neck that we just finished right here. And we're going to start off with, before we do anything else, is we're going to actually migrate some of the hardware on the old neck and bring it over to the new neck. So we're actually going to start off with the tuners here. So first thing we'll do, I'm just going to flip over the old neck, is we're going to take out the old screws, take the tuners out completely, and then we'll actually start by installing the tuners in such a way that will help us drill the pilot holes for the tuners on the back so that they can stay in place and not move around at all. So we're just going to take our screwdriver and take out the screws here. I'm just going to kind of hold the neck down with my arm. And I'm just going to demonstrate what we're going to have to do with the new neck to line up these screw holes properly. Okay, so we'll pop this guy out. Now, in addition to the actual tuner, there's also going to be this part right here, the ferrule on top. So we're going to push this out and we're going to fit that into the new neck. And we're going to do that for all 6 tuners before we go back with the actual tuning machines and start to drill the holes out. So basically what I did is I just took the head of the tuner here and used that to press against the inside collar here to push it out from the bottom. So just kind of did this basically. Press it down into the hole, and I would kind of hug one of the walls here, so not really centered, but more off to the side a little bit, and that would press this part out from the bottom. So 1 down, 5 to go. All right, so we're going to take our tuning machines out for all 6. And we already did the first one. And then, as you can see, we have the ferrules on the other side. So again, just taking one of our tuners and pressing it over to one side to push that out. Hopefully you can see that. But I'm basically just like pushing the post to one side and very slowly pushing against that lip here. I'm doing that for each of these. So see, I'm just kind of pressing it out. So again, hugging one side and pressing out the old tuner, or the old ferrule. So just doing that a few more times. Okay, so we have all the ferrules out. We're going to leave these in here for now because we're not really going to need those for a bit, but we got all the top parts out. So now, if you look carefully, actually, you can see that when these were installed, they have almost like teeth on them. That helps them, not shift around too much. And you'll see that they left a little bit of an indentation on the wood, whereas on the new neck, those holes are totally smooth. So chances are what we'll have to do is press fit these in. Oh, this is interesting, actually. Okay. So, All right, so we have a little interesting bit here. So the ferrules that I took out of the old neck are for these really cheap tuners. For these really cheap tuners. And again, they fit fairly well on the old neck. But on this new one, it seems that the holes are a little bit wider. And so this doesn't really fit in. You can see it kind of moves around a bit. Now, this brings up an interesting point in that I could, if I wanted to, I could fill these with a wooden dowel and re-drill these holes myself. But as long as these tuners are secured, I can probably secure these a slightly different way and get them to fit a little bit more snug. So I think what I'm going to do, actually, for now at least, is I'll probably just put something around on the inside, or maybe even just around this, so that when it gets pressed in, it's a little bit more snug to the sides. I might do something like painter's tape, just kind of wrap it around a few times here, just to get it to snug up. These aren't going to be the permanent tuners for this guitar. Again, this is really just to kind of get it off the ground. But that does pose an interesting thing that I was not expecting. And I mean, again, if these tuners are installed correctly, it's not really going to cause any problems. So I might just do that. So what I've done is I have, it's kind of probably hard to see what's going on here, but I basically wrapped a bunch of painter's tape around the bottom of one of these and made it so it's almost flush actually with the rim here. And then I cut off the excess with a razor blade to try to get it as close to the end here as possible. And all we're really going to do is stick that right in here. And hopefully that is close enough to the width of that hole that we can just kind of snug it up in there. That'll do. Doesn't look too pretty, but that'll do for now. Now, the reason I didn't want to fill these in with wooden dowels, which is really what you would do normally, is if I did that, it would create a lot more work later on, because I am probably not going to keep these tuners for very long, definitely not till the end of the year. We're really just keeping these for now, just as part of this project, but I will eventually be upgrading these to proper tuners, and for that I'll need these wider holes anyway, so this is really just a temporary measure. So with this, we should be able to get this post through here without issue, and then once we have all 6, we'll actually line them up and drill the holes that we need. So let's actually do the rest of them in the same method, and again, basically just taking painter's tape, wrapping it around a bunch of times till we get it to just about the right thickness, and then cutting off the excess. One of the nice things about this method is that rather than like wedging something on either side of this hole, by doing it around the circumference, I guess you could say, of this, we're still keeping this more or less centered within the hole, because there should be about, maybe not perfectly, but about an equal amount of tape on every surface of it. So it should be about centered. It's not going to be like off to one side or the other. Well, you see a gap there. And again, I could probably clean this up a bit, but for now, it's fine. We're eventually going to replace the tuners anyway, and this is really more of a cosmetic thing than a functional thing. Doesn't make a big difference. The important thing is that these will be secured with the screw holes, and this part will have this little collar to keep it from moving around too much. So between these two factors, these should be relatively stable once we're all good to go on it. So yeah. Alright, so I ended up actually going with this paper pickup tape here. This is not the cloth tape used with humbuckers, this is like a paper tape. So I ended up using this instead, and it's a little bit easier to apply and gives a similar result. So rather than using a bunch of masking tape or painter's tape and cutting it off the razor blade, this is actually about the right thickness to just go around the bottom here. And so it just works a little bit better for this. So we're going to try that instead. Alright, so I have put that paper tape around the edge of all the tuning peg ferrules, and I think it's pretty good overall. They're pretty snug, they're not falling out, so that's good enough for now. Next, we're just going to make sure that all the ferrules are free and clear of any of that tape, so that the tuning peg fits in. Yeah, it looks like all 6 are good to go. There's a little bit of tape, I think, sticking out of this one, but that's okay. Overall, though, these are fitting in pretty nicely, and again, they're nice and snug. So that will work. So next up is actually putting the tuning pegs in, and we're just going to start grabbing these guys and just kind of going to take the screws out of all these first, actually, because we're not needing them quite yet, but we're getting close. And all we're really going to do is try to line them up best we can for like a quick dry fit. There we go. Alright, so we have all our tuners, and you can see they're kind of misaligned right now, so they were slanted a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a straight edge, which I have right here, and we're just going to try to straighten them out a bit. So something like that, something sort of like that. And then once we have them straightened out and on the same line, we can start to mark off our points for the screw holes. So I'm just going to try to get this so that it's pushing evenly against the low E string and the high E string tuner. That should bring the rest of these guys up into alignment. And from there we should be good. Alright, so I just measured and marked, I should say, the holes that we're going to drill out for the tuning machines. And again, basically what I did is I put all 6 of them in here. I had to do this off camera because I needed both my hands free at the time. And I just kind of lined them up with each other using a straight edge on the back of them, all 6 of them in place. And then as I was using this mechanical pencil to mark out where the hole was for each one, I would press down on the one I was working on and just do 1, 2 for the upper one here. And I would do that on all 6 and just kind of make sure that they were evenly spaced, that this straight edge was kind of hugging the back of each of them, pressing down again, just kind of penciling in 1 and 2 before moving on to the next one. So that's what I did. I just did that 6 times, and now we have our holes marked for the pilot holes for the tuning machines. So we're going to drill those out and start installing these tuning machines. And I'm going to be using this 1/16 diameter drill bit, and the way I know that that's the right size is if I put it on top of the screw. Hopefully you can see. Maybe not so much there, but right about there you can see that the threads of the screw are on either side of the drill bit, so that should be just about the right, that's probably a better view, just about the right size where it'll drill out the hole for the actual shaft, but leave enough room for the threads to have something to bite into. So this is the drill bit that we're going to be using for this. And to make sure that we don't drill down too far and through the front of the headstock, we're just going to kind of guesstimate about that far that we want to go in, and we'll just put a little bit of painter's tape on this section here to mark off where we want to drill and where we want to stop. So that's about as far as we want to go. Alright, so we have finished installing all the tuners, and it's probably not 100% perfect, but it is pretty darn good. So we're going to leave it as is. Again, these aren't going to be the permanent tuners for this anyway, but I think this is a really good start. So we can now throw the string retainer trees on here and then put strings on it and should be good to go. Alright, and the last thing that we're going to do in order to install this on the guitar is we're going to have to drill out the holes to actually mount the neck to the body. And for that, we're going to have to figure out which size drill bit to use. And I've basically determined that it's a 5/32 drill bit. And the way I've determined that is I took the largest drill bit I had and just kind of went through and found the largest drill bit that actually fit snugly in this hole while also going all the way through. So if it had just stayed at the top, that would tell me it was too big. So I just kind of went down until I found a drill bit that was just small enough to actually fit through that hole without being so small that it fits in super easily. So that is a 5/32 drill bit that we're going to be using for that. And in order to figure out where the holes are going to be drilled, we're going to take our guitar body here, and we're going to take the new neck. And I already know that this neck actually fits it very, very snugly. So we're just going to get it pushed in all the way, lined up properly about here. And then once it's lined in, we're going to take a mechanical pencil, like this one. We're going to take a mechanical pencil and just kind of draw inside those circles. I'm trying to keep the pencil perpendicular to the neck joint and try to circle out where we're going to end up drilling our holes. So there's going to be 4 of them total. And one more thing I did just to try to find the center point is I took one of the screws and just placed it in the hole and just kind of pressed it down to create a small mark on the actual neck heel. So if I take the neck out now, you'll see that there's the pencil line going around it to show the rough diameter of the, or the rough circumference, I should say, of the hole. And then there's also that little mark in the center. So that's actually very telling here. The pencil didn't do a great job, but we do see where our center point needs to be on each of these. So that'll give us a good place to start. Alright, so what I did just to drill these holes out was I started off with a really small drill bit. I think I started off with like a 1/16 right here. And then just kind of worked my way up through 3 or 4 different drill bits before finishing off with that 5/32 bit, which is the final one. You can see I taped off about a 1/2 inch for each drill bit, so I didn't go too far. I didn't want to go through the fretboard, obviously, so I wanted to make sure we had plenty of room left on the other side of that neck heel. And then I just kind of went over it with a razor blade to cut off some of the raised edges here. So I went here, and this neck is good to be installed, so we can do that next. Alright, so the new neck is installed, and everything came together pretty well. There's just one problem, and it has nothing to do with the neck. It's actually the way that the neck pocket is routed out. So do you see how the action is really, really high? Well, that tapers down and gets a little bit lower as we get towards the nut. The nut does need to be addressed as well, but part of the problem, if you look right there, there's a bit of the maple showing, and then there's a bit more of the maple showing as we get closer and closer this way. So the neck has a bit of an upward tilt to it in relation to the body. So what we're going to do is we are going to install a shim, and this is a fairly thick shim, but the reason I made it so thick is because right now those bridge saddles are lowered almost all the way down, and the action is still that high. Yeah, so we have a lot of correcting to do, so I think this shim will help eliminate a lot of that, and hopefully that'll get us a little bit more in range of where we need to be. Alright, we have the fully assembled guitar here. We're going to start stringing it up, and then once it's strung up, we're going to see how it plays and how it sounds. Alright, so this guitar is totally strung up, it has been set up, and it is ready to be played. So, let's see how it sounds.